Hey everyone, you're with Tesla Tom, and thanks so much for joining me today on my YouTube channel where I discuss Tesla, electric vehicles, and renewable energy. If this is your first time to my channel, then hello and welcome. Take a moment to hit that red subscribe button, and that way you stay informed of any new content, and it also helps my channel to grow as well. Today we're going to look at the total cost of ownership between a Tesla Model 3 and a Mercedes C200 here in Australia. We're going to do that and much more right after this. Hey guys, welcome back, and I just want to point out to you this very handy resource from the New South Wales government, which was pointed out to me by one of our viewers, so thank you very much. It's essentially a buying guide for electric vehicles here in Australia. I'll leave a link to the website in the description below. So there's actually a really handy calculator for the total cost of ownership between two vehicles. So let's give it a go now. So set my location, Australia. Let's set Chatswood as our postcode, which is where the Tesla service center is currently, so 2067. That's Chatswood's postcode. And on this page, you can compare two types of cars. So I'm going to select, and of course you can choose between battery electric, plug-in hybrid, and petrol and diesel. So let's click battery electric. We're going to choose a Tesla on this side. We're going to choose a Model 3 and a 2021 Model 3. And there's some stats about the Model 3, 66,900 RRP, 415 battery range for a standard range plus, 5 seats, fuel consumption 13 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Let's compare it today to a Mercedes C-Class. And why am I choosing Mercedes? Well, people always ask me, like, why are electric vehicles so expensive? Okay, so this is where I say you've got to compare apples with apples. I mean, certainly you can compare a Tesla Model 3 with something like a Camry, which I can do for you if you really want me to in a separate video. But today I really want to compare two cars that are very similar in price and arguably quality as well. And they're both considered, quote unquote luxury cars, I think, currently in this space. So that's why I'm choosing a Mercedes C200 2019 edition 63,700. It's a little bit cheaper than a Tesla Model 3, 5 seats, 6 litres per 100 kilometres. But before I go into the next screen, I just want to show you what this site is actually using as criteria to determine the total cost of ownership for these two vehicles. So it says here, determining the TCO or total cost of ownership for a particular vehicle involves understanding the cash flow impact of ownership of a vehicle over a defined time frame. There are several inputs into a TCO calculation as outlined in the following table. So they certainly take into account purchase price, and that's the ultimate cash price after all the dealer rebates and dealer delivery charges, duties and taxes, stamp duty, takes into account luxury car tax, registration charges, CTP insurance, subsidies, any government subsidies provided, running costs like maintenance costs, third-party insurance, fuel, pre-sale make good costs, cost of vehicle improvements prior to resale, like modifications, I assume, residual value, that's depreciation, we'll go through that as well, finance costs, any fees, charges associated with borrowing money to purchase the vehicle, holding period, the time between purchase and sale of a vehicle, and accident management fee, the cost of roadside assistance and management of repairs process. So it certainly takes into account all those variables when you're calculating the total cost of ownership between two vehicles. So let's press next. And what I do like about this form is that you can actually make it as detailed as you like. For example, this page, it's asking you how much do you drive per day or over a certain period of time. So if you just want to estimate how much you drive in a year, you can. So I'm going to put, let's say, 20,000 kilometers. If you want to be more precise, you can actually click that Use Advanced Driving form. So you can actually determine how many kilometers in a weekday you drive, how many kilometers in a weekend you drive, what's your annual road trip distance, how much of your day-to-day driving is urban, where do you charge, have you got a parking or private space where you charge at home, do you have a free charger at work, how much is your car at home between 8 and 6 p.m. and that's important because it actually takes into account whether you've got a solar panel system as well as a battery, and we'll get into that as well later on. But for the first time round, what I'm going to do is just make it simple, use their defaults and just leave it at 20,000 kilometers per annum. So let's press next. And then in this page here, it's telling you where you get your energy from for your electric vehicles. So have you got solar panels? Have you got a battery? And we'll come back to that as well. But for now, we're going to put no. We're going to assume someone who's comparing buying an electric vehicle versus a petrol car that don't have any of this infrastructure set up at the moment. So let's press submit. All right, so here we are. We've got this screen that we're after, a cost breakdown between a 2021 Tesla Model 3 on the left and then a 2019 Mercedes-Benz C200 over a 5-year period. This is perfect because a lot of people borrow money, if they're going to borrow money, over a 5-year period to finance a new car. So the total on-road cost for a Tesla Model 3 is $69,392. A total on-road cost for a Mercedes-Benz, $3,000 cheaper, $66,032. And the monthly running cost for a Model 3 is $130.94, whereas the Mercedes-Benz, $382.42. And you're asking me what is involved in the monthly running cost. So let's look at that question mark. The total monthly running cost of running the car includes servicing, tires, taxes, duties, and fuel. All right, so that's kind of the main bulk or main makeup of running a car for that period of time. And then the next figure is the environmental impact of that vehicle. So over a 5-year period, the total amount of carbon dioxide your car will produce, or your Tesla Model 3 will produce, is 10.51 tons compared to a Mercedes-Benz 33 tons. So of course, if that's important to you, this is where, of course, a Tesla will win overall. And the next bracket is actually really interesting as well. So depreciation costs, this is how much your car will depreciate in 5 years. So between the Tesla Model 3 and the Mercedes-Benz C200, the depreciation is actually very similar. The Model 3 will depreciate $48,000 and the Mercedes-Benz will depreciate $45,800. If you're not sure what that means, it's essentially how much less your car will be worth after 5 years. So for example, you might be able to resell your car in 5 years' time if you've bought your Mercedes for $66,000 minus $45,000, so about $21,000 thereabouts. That's how much your car will be worth in 5 years' time. Whereas the Model 3, it'll be $69,000 today. It'll be 69 minus 48, which is about $21,000 in 5 years' time. So a very similar resale value between the two. The next thing is fuel, and of course, a Model 3, the cost of running your Model 3 in terms of how much electricity it uses will be far less than the cost of petrol of running your Mercedes C200. So this site has valued it at $2,643.05 to power your Model 3 over 5 years versus $9,000 to put fuel into your Mercedes-Benz. And what constitutes fuel exactly? This question mark says cost of the fuel component over 5 years based on your driving habits and distance, as well as the cost of fuel and electricity, includes any reduction in charging costs from home solar and batteries. And that's where the home solar and batteries tab will come in very handy, and I'll play with that in a second as well. Next thing is taxes and duties. So between the two cars, it's very similar for registration costs, which is what this category is. On-road costs include luxury car tax, stamp duty, standard license plate fee, annual registration fees include registration fee, motor vehicle tax, and any road worthiness fees. And that's a pink slip or e-safety service check we have in New South Wales after 5 years of ownership. And the taxes are very similar, $5,382, $5,222. All right, so this is the main figure that we all want to look at. So after a 5-year period, the cost to own your Model 3, if we include the depreciation costs and the monthly running costs, which is essentially what this figure is, $55,957 versus a Mercedes-Benz C200, the 5-year cost to own your Mercedes will be $68,745. That's taking into account depreciation plus $382.42 per month over a 60-month period. That will give you a figure of $68,745. So as you can see, if you actually compare apples and apples, i.e. a Tesla Model 3 and a Mercedes-Benz C200, the cost of ownership over 5 years actually stacks up very well for the Tesla. You're actually $13,000 ahead if you were to choose a Tesla Model 3 today over a Mercedes-Benz C200. And of course, it'll be very interesting to see how it stacks up against a cheaper vehicle like a Toyota Camry, for example. But of course, if you want me to do another comparison on another video for another car, let me know in the comments below. All right, so we've compared a Tesla and a C200 basically without solar, without battery, without all that infrastructure. What happens if you do add things like solar and batteries? So let's add home solar for now. And this is kind of like a default tab. You can actually play with how many kilowatt your solar array is, because if you look at the question mark here, it's assuming a 7 kilowatt array, which contributes to home charging. So let's take off the tab now. So just keep these figures in mind. Monthly running costs $130.94. If I put the tab on now, the monthly running cost drops to $111.97. and your cost of ownership, let's take the tab off, from $55,957 to $54,819. So $1,000 saving if you have a 7 kilowatt array with your Model 3. And of course, if you take off the tab, your CO2 consumption over that 5-year period drops as well significantly because you're not using fossil fuel to power your vehicle, from 10.51 tons to 5.73 tons. And suddenly it looks even more compelling to buy a Tesla Model 3. What happens if you add a home battery? And the default setting for a home battery is a 4 kilowatt hour system. So that's actually far smaller than a Tesla Powerwall 2. But nevertheless, let's go with the default setting. Let's click that tab. So without the tab, if you've got the solar, monthly running cost $119.97. If you add the battery, it drops down to $94.41, assuming that you use the battery to charge your car. So the 5-year cost to own the vehicle drops even lower, from $54,819 to $53,766. So almost another $1,000 saving over 5 years. But what's really interesting actually is looking at the depreciation on the solar panels versus the battery. So a lot of the time people tell me, well, a battery is actually not worth buying because it's actually quite expensive and you don't get much more saving. And unfortunately that seems to hold true as well if you look at the depreciation on the battery compared to solar. So if I take off the home battery tab, down here, the depreciation on energy assets, it only drops by $1,324 and you save $5,567. And what's depreciation? It says equivalent spend on assets depreciated on a straight line basis over 25 years for solar and 10 years for battery. That's taking into account the average warranty period for solar and battery, 25 and 10. And then home electricity savings, saving from solar export and subsidy and battery off-peak arbitrage. EV savings are already included fuel costs. Okay, so if you just click solar alone, that's your depreciation versus home electricity saving. If you click the home battery, you actually depreciate far more with the home battery and the savings are in fact minimal. In fact, you have less electricity savings because it's going to the car as well. If you're thinking of adding solar and battery at this stage, I would recommend you just add solar for the time being, see how it goes with your electricity bills, and if the finances allow, then consider having a battery. And look at this calculator as well to see whether it's worth adding a battery if you're also going to buy an electric vehicle. What happens if we go fancier? What if we get a little bit cute? What if we just tailor and customize some of the figures to suit our needs? So we can do that. So let's have a look at driving. Yeah, let's keep going to driving. All right, so let's say I drive 50 kilometers a day. On a weekend, I say I drive more. So let's see if I get, go around, visit people, drop the kids off at sport, all that stuff. Annual road trip, what happens if I take a big road trip every year? So let's say I drive 500 kilometers. I go to somewhere on the New South Wales coast. How much of my day-to-day driving is urban? I would say a lot of the time it's actually urban. And that's city driving. So let's go 85% urban. I don't use freeways that often in my situation. Where you can charge. So do I have a private parking space or driveway at home? Yes, I do. How much is your car at home? Between 8 and 6. Yeah, 50% sounds fine. Sometimes I have time off as well. Do you have access to a free charger at work? No, I don't usually. And 50% on weekends I drive. Yeah, my car is sort of half the time at home on the weekend as well. So that makes sense. So let's press submit there. Okay. So doesn't make much of a difference. And yes, it actually has made a big difference if I just calculate to those parameters. Because suddenly, if you look at the Mercedes side, it's $75,000 over 5 years compared to $60-something thousand before. And the monthly running cost has certainly gone up a lot in that time. Whereas the Model 3 really hasn't changed too much. I think it might have gone up maybe $1,000 at the most. But the gap has certainly widened now with those extra parameters. The next thing I want to do is actually look at settings. So currently they've got the price of petrol at $1.26, and I think that's a little bit low, a little bit generous. I think a Mercedes actually takes premium unleaded, and it's actually a bit more expensive than that. And I would say on a good day, it's $1.50. So if we change it to $1.50 in Sydney, public charge point costs, yeah, okay, I'll leave that because I don't really charge much away from home. Home electricity tariff, yeah, I'll put my peak rates in, which is actually 54 cents. It's very high. And off-peak is more like, say, 15 cents. And export rate, I think I get 8 at the moment, so a bit more. And yeah, daily charge rate, that sounds about right. Percentage green power, I think that's about right as well. So and leave it at 5 years of ownership. Let's submit that. Okay, so the numbers have changed again, but very similar for both sides. So the cost of ownership for Model 3 is $57,000 versus 77,000 for the Mercedes-Benz because I've increased the price of petrol. The gap is about the same at $20,000. If I quickly look at energy, let's say I want to add a big array, let's say 10 kilowatts. They're all north-facing. Ideal orientation. Let's use a household average. That's about right. 7,200 kilowatt hours a year. That's 600 kilowatt hours a month. Over a 30-day period, 20 kilowatt hours per day. I think that's pretty good. Let's say I want a full 13.5 kilowatt hour battery from Tesla. Let's put 13 kilowatt hours. And let's press submit once again. Doesn't make a difference at all. All right, so let's see what happens with those parameters if I add home solar. So my 5-year cost drops down by a couple of grand. It's now $55,000. So the gap now widens. It's out to $22,000 between the two. What if I add that Tesla Powerwall 2 battery? That's 13 kilowatt hours in capacity. And the gap widens once again. So from $55,900 to $54,400. So it's now up to $13,000. So look, I guess, you know, if you looking at these figures here, there certainly is a benefit over a 5-year period owning a Tesla Model 3 over a Mercedes-Benz, and that gap widens once again if you add extra infrastructure like your solar panels or a battery on top of that. It does make sense, I think. And for me, this is certainly confirmation that owning a Tesla Model 3, if you compare apples with apples, comparing it to a car that's of equivalent price and build and quality, then I think it's certainly worth your time over that period with the savings you get in fuel as well. Alright guys, well thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. Certainly go check out that website from the New South Wales government. Even if you don't live in New South Wales, I think it's still quite a handy guide to have, and just put in your own parameters and situation. I think you'll get quite an accurate picture from that site. Alright guys, well thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure you hit that like button. I'd really appreciate that. And of course subscribe if you have not done so already yet. And which car would you like me to compare the Tesla Model 3 to next? There's actually quite a lot of cars available to compare to on this website, whether it be a hybrid battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. I would love to do another comparison for you guys next time. Alright guys, stay safe, and as always, happy charging.